Triangle Agency is a modern conspiracy supernatural investigation RPG published in 2025 following a very strong crowdfunding campaign the year before. I remember backing this one when it was on Kickstarter and just sort of assumed that it was a huge team of people judging by the clean design and presentation of everything. But nope, it's really just an indie RPG made by a handful of folks who just know what they're doing. If you're not familiar with this modern conspiracy supernatural investigation genre, a short and snazzy name I came up with myself, then think games like The Contract, which I've reviewed on this channel, or SCP, which is first and foremost a creative writing project, but later became a game. Others in this genre would be Delta Green, Unknown Armies, The Laundry, Night's Black Agent, and The Esoterrorists, to name a few. Basically, the idea is that you work for a shadowy agency tasked with hunting down one kind of supernatural threat or another, but in most cases, the agency you work for is not to be trusted, and you're usually grappling with home life as well as work life right there on your character sheet. Triangle Agency gets pretty trippy though, and it presents itself with tongue firmly in cheek. In fact, this is one of those humor games where it's trying to be funny and it wants you to try and be funny too. The corporation that you work for is comically heartless and devoid of any empathy whatsoever. Your job is to either capture, contain, or destroy so-called anomalies, which are manifestations of collective thought that coalesce into reality. In this video, I want to show you a few cool things that you can do as an agent of the Triangle Agency, maybe a bit through the cheeky lens of the core rulebook itself. And then at the end, I'll share my takeaways from actually playing this game with the creators themselves, something I really appreciate them running for me. Also, I did a written interview with the creator, Caleb Zane Hewitt, in which I asked him all of my most critical questions about this game, from layout to rules design and everything in between. So whereas this video will be mostly positive, my interview with Caleb is where I really sort of dig and scrape at the game. Caleb had some really great answers and explanations, which was no surprise to me. A link to the written interview is below. But alright, let's get cracking on the cool things that you can do if you sign your life away to the Triangle Agency today. You get a gun. I know guns are controversial in some parts of the world, but don't worry, this isn't a real gun, it's a ripple gun. And for safety and budget purposes, it only has one shot, and you can't shoot it at fellow agents. I don't even think you can shoot it at civilians, only at anomalies, those supernatural phenomena that you're supposed to be capturing or killing. You get to encounter anomalies. These are unreal beings that spontaneously form in reality if there are enough thoughts or emotions concentrated in one place to make it happen. They're composed of a focus, which is the thought that brought them into being, and a domain, which is its place of power and usually where it broke into reality. They're really dangerous and have no regard for human life and can take any shape or form, including people, but normal folks don't get to encounter them, and you do.
So, hey there. If you appreciate this kind of content and want more, consider chipping in a few dollars to the Dave Thaumavore RPGs Review Patreon. The primary reason is to help the channel grow, but there's also a Patreon-only Discord for supporters. That's where supporters can chat about the gaming industry, technology, and other things that affect the hobby. Most importantly, the Discord is where I listen to your opinions and suggestions first. If you'd like to keep these reviews going strong and maybe help shape them, then join the Patreon and the Discord.
Enjoy so many avenues to success. The agency will award you commendation points for doing any of these things, and those points can be used to buy stuff like coffee mugs and helicopters. The more sessions of this game you play, the more you might see this number go up on your piece of paper, and it can be an amazing feeling. It's worth mentioning that you can also earn demerits for not doing your job or violating company policy. These will stack up if you don't make amends somehow and can eventually culminate in frozen yogurt privileges being revoked, hence that joke at the beginning of this video. Experience D4s like you never have before. In a vast majority of cases, as you're reliving your agent's life at the table through this tabletop simulation, you're rolling 6 D4s, and all you're looking for is 3s. Even a single 3 means you've rolled success, but any rolled dice that aren't 3 count as a chaos point that the GM banks and later spins against you and your team. Your qualities are all metacurrencies. There are technically no skill checks in this game. Instead, you're managing 9 different qualities that act as point pools, and you can spend those points to fudge the dice. But if any one of those qualities reaches 0, then you have burnout in that quality, and it starts degrading your rolls. So basically, you don't want to overspend those points, but you also want to cheat reality when you get a bad roll. It's tough. You can break reality with a good roll. There is so much bending and breaking of reality as an agent, and the place where you'll love it most is when you roll exactly 3 threes. This is called Transcendence, and it means that you can do one of these 3 special things listed here. Rolling 3 threes is actually not terribly uncommon. You should break out 6 D4s right now and start rolling them to see how long it takes before you hit a Transcendence. The agency will change reality for you. There's a mechanic in the game where you can just ask the agency to have a thing or change a scene, and as long as you can come up with a reason that it appears to happen in actual reality and not be by supernatural means through which the agency does it, and you roll at least 1 3, then it happens. There's a bunch of small print, but we don't need to worry about that. You can take ungodly amounts of damage. Technically, if you suffer even 1 point of harm in this game, you're dead. But you can use those quality points we mentioned earlier to cancel out harm on a 1-for-1 basis. And then even if you run out of quality meta points, you get resurrected back at the local branch for a cost of 5 commendation points, but you're still alive. There is some language about the agency just letting you die, but it's not clear when that is. We can just go to the next item. You can fight with your friends. There's a whole PvP protocol for resolving arguments with fellow agents. It basically comes down to rolling your 64s until one of you gets to 6 threes first. There are some alternative dispute resolutions as well, but honestly, they're not as good because you don't get to roll those D4s that you meticulously 3D printed, sanded, painted, and glossed. They didn't turn out as well as you'd hoped, but they're better than the standard pyramid D4s because they're easier to pick up and you scaled them up to be bigger and easier to read. And even though you printed them using resin and you were afraid they would crack and chip, they hold up amazingly well, especially when using a soft dice tray. You wouldn't want to drop them on a hard floor or anything, but as long as you're not being reckless with them, you've pretty much made yourself a great little personal set of D4s to use with Triangle Agency. Maybe the only thing you'd change about them is the font. You get superpowers. There are 9 categories of powers that all stem from anomalies themselves. Technically, you have some anomaly inside of you, which makes you a so-called resonant, but it's perfectly safe. Nothing bad ever happens from it. Actually, I take that back. If you don't roll or buy any successes when you try to use your power, there is a bad thing that absolutely does happen to you or your target every single time. Sometimes these bad things are just socially awkward situations that last for a short time, and in other cases, people or animals permanently die and everyone sees you doing it. But that being said, each of the 27 powers has a provision for spending bonus successes. So it's generally a very positive thing that you're working with here, the superpowers. You get to live your life. The agency isn't this overbearing nightmare of an employer that doesn't let you have a normal life with friends and family. No, you can totally opt for one of these 9 archetypes. Each of these so-called realities that you choose even comes with a burnout release, which describes a situation where you could ignore any burnout. And if and when the pressures of your life in this archetype stack up past 4 stations of unique suffering, you just choose another reality and keep on living your best life. Everyone has a role. There are 9 role archetypes to choose from, and they each give you situations where you can earn a demerit, as well as 3 behaviors that will actually earn you commendations. For example, if you're a CEO, you will receive a demerit anytime you take an order in the fiction, so don't let the GM trick you into doing that. But you can also stack those commendation points by doing any of these 3 things. Just to be clear, if you choose CEO, you're not like the CEO of Triangle Agency. It's just an empty title, but the characteristics and all this stuff are still in play. You can quit anytime. As mentioned earlier, this game is meant to simulate your actual time and effort with the agency, but if you don't want to run the simulation for any reason, you can walk away, no questions asked. The agency will make sure that you continue to believe that you're living out the rest of your life before throwing away your file, which is really nice of them. You can be a general manager, or GM for short. There's a solid 60 pages of the core rulebook that goes over all kinds of advice for how to run this game. Now, did the creators of this game maybe get carried away with the layout and make things maybe kind of hard to read? Did they liberally mix avant-garde page design with cheeky, jokey graphical elements to the point where accessing the GM advice could be construed as difficult? Does it get absolutely so bonkers that you don't know where the helpful, useful material stops and the loud, jokey graphics begin? The answer is no. This is a perfectly normal GM section that you can just read like a normal person. Absolutely no legibility issues whatsoever here. I don't know why you're making a big deal out of it. You just read the pages, it's fine. Just super standard stuff as far as book layouts go. Words are on the page, you read the words, you get the GM advice. It's that simple. Hundreds of reality-bending one-off occurrences. It would be a disservice for me to show you anything more than one spread from the 100 pages of what are called play-walled documents. These are just dozens and dozens of wildly creative entries that the general manager is supposed to throw at you at different times throughout your investigation. There is a staggering amount of game design that you may or may not even encounter here. Okay, with all that settled, I wanted to share the takeaways from my playthrough of Triangle Agency with the creators. Again, thanks to Caleb and Sean for running and playing that game with me. We had a lot of fun. This is the diametric opposite of D&D. If you're tired of people constantly talking about the latest changes that Wizards of the Coast has made to D&D and optimum character builds and kitchen sink fantasy setting bloat, this game is pretty much the polar opposite of that. In fact, Caleb told me that he professionally DM'd Dungeons & Dragons for 3 years and wanted to escape that game. This game is an escape from pretty much everything D&D. You largely don't fight your way out of problems. It's a modern urban setting. Players come up with a lot of the details, and obviously the mechanics are wildly different from any version of Dungeons & Dragons. The GM juggles a lot. In this game, each PC has 3 NPC relationships that they track and try to nurture and develop, and it's up to the GM to make sure those NPCs stay relevant somehow in the fiction. Well, if you're playing with 3 players, then that's 9 NPCs that the GM has to insert at some point into the fiction, on top of all the NPCs that they may have had in mind for the scenario. Players lend a hand in GMing. The Ask the Agency power allows players to really tweak and shape a scene, with a good roll of the dice, of course. And since they play the role of at least one other player's special NPC, they are shouldering a bit of the burden that a GM would normally carry. Commendation and demerit points guide the characters. I don't think the point of this game is to win each session, but it is interesting if you display everyone's total commendation and demerit points for everyone to see during the course of play. When players actually care about these points, it allows the GM to focus PC behavior and choices a bit, because otherwise you can just kind of make any mundane choices you want in the fiction, and it could be a bit aimless. Economy of chaos points limit everyone in a good way. Anytime you try to use a power as a player, you're most likely going to generate chaos points, which means you don't want to spam your powers. Chaos points are spent by the GM to introduce different threats and obstructions in the fiction, but they also can't spam the fiction with threats because they need the chaos points in order to buy those threats in the first place. It's an economy that limits both sides and keeps things pretty grounded. So that's it for this video, but again, I did a written interview with creators Caleb Zane Hewitt and Sean Ireland on my newsletter, where I asked them some hard questions about this game's design choices. You should check it out if you want to go deeper into an analysis of this game. I've left links below to that interview, as well as where you can buy this game for yourself. Make sure to leave a comment sharing your thoughts on this game so far, as well as your experiences with this sort of modern conspiracy supernatural investigation RPG. Thanks for watching. I'll see ya.